All right. All right. Listen up. Yeah. You. The one who didn't mean to shake the room, but somehow did anyway. The one everybody suddenly got opinions about. Glad you showed up. You don't even fully remember the moment, do you? It didn't feel heroic. It didn't feel cinematic. It felt messy. It felt impulsive. It felt like one of those seconds where your brain says, don't, and your backbone says, watch me. And that's the thing nobody wants to admit. Power never announces itself politely. Power shows up when you cross a line you were trained to fear. You didn't wake up planning to take control. You woke up tired. Tired of being reasonable, tired of swallowing comments, tired of being the calm one while everybody else got loud, messy, entitled, tired of playing the role they handed you like it was permanent. And somewhere between one last look and one last breath, you stepped over something invisible, and the whole atmosphere shifted. See, people love rules until someone breaks them and survives. That's when it gets quiet. That's when the laughter cuts off mid-sentence. That's when the room recalibrates around you. Because now, you're not predictable anymore. Now you're not manageable. Now you're not safe in the way they prefer. You crossed a line and didn't get crushed. Didn't apologize. Didn't fold. And that does something to people. It scares the hell out of them. You felt it, right? That weird pause afterward. That moment where nobody knew how to talk to you like they used to. Where respect slid in sideways wearing fear's jacket. That's when you walked out running this shite. Not because you yelled the loudest, not because you threatened anyone, but because you proved, without preaching, that you are not stuck where they left you. You see, dominance doesn't always look like aggression. Sometimes it looks like silence after action. Sometimes it's just standing there like, yeah, I did that, and I'd do it again, and now. Now everybody's replaying that moment in their head, what you said, what you didn't say, how calm you looked afterward, how unbothered you were. They're wondering where else that version of you exists. Because people don't fear chaos. They fear permission. They fear realizing they were obeying rules that only applied because nobody questioned them. And you questioned one. You stepped over it. You came back with dirt on your shoes and control in your hands. Here's the part nobody's brave enough to say to your face. You didn't become arrogant. You became undeniable. You stopped asking for alignment and started setting the temperature. You didn't seek authority. You exposed it as fragile. And yeah, they'll try to reframe the story. They'll say you're different now. They'll call it reckless. They'll say you changed. No, you activated. You reached that point where being liked mattered less than being real. Where comfort lost to clarity. Where the mask got heavy and the cost of wearing it finally exceeded the consequences of taking it off. And once that happens, there is no uncrossing that line. Because now you've seen it. The way power shifts when you stop negotiating your presence. The way people adjust when they realize you're not waiting for approval anymore. You're not loud, but you're felt. You're not chasing, but you're setting pace. You're not begging, but somehow decisions orbit you now. That's what happens when you walk back into places that once minimized you, carrying proof that you don't need them to validate your position. They can sense it in your pauses now, in your eye contact, in the way you don't rush to explain yourself. Because you crossed a line, and instead of falling, you leveled up, and whether they like it or not, whether they admit it or not. The moment you did that, the hierarchy rewrote itself around you, and they know it. Because the truth nobody says out loud is that once you've tipped the balance, everything that used to feel solid starts feeling fake. Conversations get weird. Smiles linger half a second too long. People start choosing their words around you like they're stepping on thin ice, and you feel it in your chest, this calm that didn't exist before. Not excitement, not rage, just clarity. The kind that shows up after you've already made peace with being misunderstood. You're not scrambling anymore. You're not explaining context. You're not cleaning up emotions that were never yours to manage in the first place. Because when you crossed that line, you proved something deeper than confidence. You proved independence from permission. And that messes with everybody's mental map. Think back. You used to rehearse answers in your head before speaking. Used to cushion your truth to keep the temperature comfortable. Used to soften your edges so nobody felt challenged. That version of you doesn't survive moments like that. The move you made didn't just change optics. It recalibrated identity. You stopped performing and started occupying space like it was already yours. And people notice when you're no longer trying to be understood. They notice when you're not fishing for reactions. They notice when your silence carries more weight than their noise. You didn't become careless. You became deliberate. You didn't become cold. You became precise. Power is quiet when it's real. It doesn't posture. It doesn't argue. It lets confusion do the heavy lifting while you stand grounded in exactly what you chose. And the wild part? Some people secretly feel relieved. Because your move validated thoughts they were too scared to act on. You became proof that survival exists on the other side of risk. Others, though, they're unsettled because your existence threatens the structure they were hiding behind. When one person steps outside the script, it exposes how fragile the script always was. You can't unsee that. You can't unknow it. That's why walking back feels different. Same place, same faces, completely different energy. You're not walking into rooms anymore. You're walking through them, and it's not ego driving this. It's alignment. When choices finally match what your nervous system has been screaming for years. You move slower now, but you land harder. You speak less, but every word sticks. You don't react. You respond when it matters. And somewhere in all of that, leadership stops being a title and starts being a gravity. People adjust without being told. Dynamics shift without discussion. The center of decision quietly relocates toward you. You didn't steal control. You didn't campaign for it. You earned it the second you refused to retreat. That line you crossed didn't disappear behind you. It burned itself into memory, into reputation, into the way your name lands in conversations you're not even in. You're no longer an option people scroll past. You're a factor. That's why even the people who used to overlook you start double-checking their tone. They're careful with jokes around you now. Careful with assumptions. Careful with that casual disrespect they used to throw around like it was harmless. Because something about you feels non-negotiable. You didn't announce a transformation. You didn't post a quote about growth. You didn't need a rebrand. The shift showed up in your posture, in how you pause before answering, in how you don't fill silence just to keep things smooth anymore. You stopped managing other people's comfort. And that's a heavy thing for the world to process, because most people are addicted to being palatable. Most people are trained to trade truth for acceptance, edge for approval, instinct for validation. You broke that bargain. Remember how you used to replay moments at night, wondering if you should have said more or less? That loop went quiet, Not because you figured everything out, but because you stopped outsourcing your self-respect. That's when momentum changed. You don't rush anymore. You don't chase outcomes. You move like time will rearrange itself around you. And somehow it does. Meetings stretch, conversations bend. People wait for your reaction before committing to theirs. It's subtle, but it's loud at the same time. You're not the loudest voice in the room, yet decisions start circling back to you. You're not demanding attention, yet eyes keep finding you when things get tense. That's what happens when you're no longer afraid of the cost. When you already paid it. The fear that used to control you lost leverage the moment you walked through it and realized you're still breathing, still standing, still you, just sharper. And here's the part that hits different. You're not angry about it. That's what confuses them most. There's no bitterness driving you, no chaos spilling out. It's this calm, grounded certainty that says you're done debating your worth. You're not trying to dominate anything. You're just not shrinking anymore. Power doesn't always flip tables. Sometimes it just stops being moved. Sometimes it's the refusal to flinch, the ability to remain steady while other people scramble for footing. You feel it when tension rises and your body doesn't react the old way. No tight chest, no frantic explanations, just presence, just awareness, just choice. And when you choose, it's clean. People feel safer or more threatened depending on where they stand with themselves. Because your energy forces a mirror. No mask survives long around someone who's already taken theirs off. You didn't become fearless. You became honest about what matters. That honesty travels fast. Through glances, through silence, through the way your phone doesn't light up as much. But when it does, it's for things that actually matter. You're not everywhere anymore. You're central. You walked over a line and discovered something they'll never be able to take back from you. The internal permission to operate on your own terms, to trust your instincts even when the room doesn't nod along, to stand in decisions without narrating them, to hold your ground without raising your voice, to let your presence speak before your mouth ever does. And that presence keeps expanding, whether you acknowledge it or not. It's in the way rooms feel smaller when you step into them. Not because you're towering over anyone, but because the uncertainty has shifted. People don't know which version of reality you're willing to tolerate anymore. You're not unpredictable. You're unaligned with expectations, and that's dangerous in the best way. You notice how people test the edges with you. Little comments, side remarks, half jokes meant to see if the old version shows up, the one that laughed it off, the one that adjusted, the one that carried the weight quietly. That version doesn't answer anymore. It's not drama. It's discipline, emotional discipline, the kind that comes from finally trusting your own signal over the noise. Every decision feels cleaner, almost boring, because it's rooted instead of reactive. You stopped proving points. You started embodying standards. And standards change behavior faster than arguments ever could. People calibrate themselves around you because they can feel that you're not desperate to be understood. You're not chasing agreement. You're not bargaining your instincts for peace. There's nothing to grab onto anymore. That's when authority sneaks in, quietly, invisibly, like gravity. Nobody announces it, but everyone obeys it. You feel it when conversations turn toward you for confirmation, when pauses stretch just long enough for your response to become the anchor, when someone checks your face before committing to a stance. That's influence without effort. You didn't gain it by force. You gained it by refusing to abandon yourself. Look at how your body reacts these days. You're not bracing like before. Shoulders relaxed, breathing slower. The nervous system finally figured out that you don't need permission to exist fully. That calm unsettles people who live off control dynamics. Because calm means you're not hooked. Calm means you're not manipulable. Calm means you can walk away without flinching. Walking away becomes one of the loudest statements you make. You notice fewer words land on you. Fewer opinions stick. Criticism feels distant, almost theoretical, because it no longer defines the frame you operate in. This doesn't make you better than anyone. It makes you clearer, and clarity has weight. It changes how choices line up. It changes what feels negotiable. You're more selective with your energy, more protective of your attention, less interested in chaos disguised as urgency. And that restraint translates as strength. People underestimate the kind of power that doesn't rush, that doesn't over-explain, that doesn't need to be seen doing the most. You carry it in stillness. Even conflict hits different now. You don't escalate. You don't retreat. You stand there grounded, letting discomfort cook, letting truth breathe, letting others reveal themselves without interruption. That patience feels ruthless to people who rely on emotional pressure. You crossed a line and discovered you don't owe anyone access to your internal world. You choose when to engage, when to speak, when to move. That choice is everything, and it keeps unfolding in how you listen more than you talk, in how your yes means something again, in how your no lands like a final answer without needing justification, in how your presence continues shaping outcomes long after you leave the room, in how control stopped feeling like something to chase and turned into something that simply surrounds you while you keep moving forward without performing, without explaining, without shrinking, without checking the temperature before you stand exactly where you stand. Because once that switch flips inside you, it doesn't flip back. You can feel it even on regular days. Grocery store, street traffic, random conversations. You're calmer, but there's this quiet alertness underneath, like you finally trust yourself to handle whatever pops up without rehearsing it first. You don't scan the room for threats anymore. You scan for relevance. And that changes posture, changes breath, changes how long you're willing to entertain nonsense before disengaging. You're not rude, you're selective. Big difference. People can feel it and they don't always know why. You catch people trying to read you more closely than before, trying to decode what sets you off, what moves you, what gets access. And the wild part is you're not hiding anything. You're just not broadcasting. That restraint feels loud. You've noticed your reactions slowed down, not frozen, measured, like you're standing half a step behind your emotions instead of inside them. That space gives you leverage. In that gap, you choose instead of explode. You decide instead of defend. Power lives right there. There was a time when tension would hijack your chest, make your thoughts scatter, make you explain things nobody asked for. That reflex faded, not from pretending to be fearless, but from learning that not everything deserves a response. Silence stopped feeling awkward and started feeling intentional. You use it like a tool. Meetings end earlier. Arguments dissolve halfway through. People backtrack mid-sentence when they realize the old hooks don't land anymore. You're watching it happen from the inside, almost amused, almost curious. None of this came from confidence quotes or motivational binge-watching. It came from pressure, from having your back against something solid, from realizing the worst thing already happened, and you're still standing. That realization rewires behavior. You don't need to warn people when you're serious. They sense it in the way you maintain eye contact without flexing, in how your voice doesn't rise to compete, in how your body stays relaxed even when the stakes climb. That calm reads as authority. Control isn't about domination, it's about orientation. Everyone around you starts orienting differently. Conversations adjust, energy shifts. Even resistance feels quieter, more cautious, like people are measuring the cost before pushing. You're not unpredictable, you're decisive. And decisiveness feels threatening to anyone who survives by keeping things vague. You've also noticed fewer people have access to your time. The circle tightened naturally. No announcements, no drama, just priority aligning itself. The conversations that remain feel heavier, more intentional, more real. You laugh less at things you don't find funny, smile less to smooth edges. You let moments sit as they are, unpolished. That honesty hums underneath everything you do, and it keeps doing something strange to your environment. Opportunities approach differently. Problems reveal themselves faster. You see dynamics before they fully form and sidestep them without ceremony. You're not rushing growth, you're inhabiting it. Even rest feels different, deeper, cleaner. Like your body finally believes you won't abandon yourself to keep the peace. That trust inside you shifts the entire baseline of how you move through the world. You crossed a line once and found out where your spine actually is. You found out you can live from there, speak from there, decide from there. And everything that follows keeps stacking quietly, moment by moment, interaction by interaction, breath by breath, as you keep standing exactly where you are without shrinking, without signaling, without reverting, aware of how far things have moved and how effortlessly they continue moving with you, still right in the center of it all. While the room keeps adjusting around you, and the energy keeps responding, and the sense of control keeps deepening. Not as something you hold tightly, but as something that stays with you while you walk and breathe and speak and pause and notice how different everything feels when you're no longer asking for space and no longer bracing for permission and no longer preparing to retreat, as the momentum keeps rolling forward without needing a break to explain itself, until even your own memories feel like they belong to someone you outgrew. You think back to situations that used to shake you, and it's wild how distant they feel. Same events, same facts, completely different internal reaction, like your nervous system finally upgraded its software. You don't flinch at tension anymore. You read it, you feel where it's coming from, and you decide how close it gets. That kind of control isn't flashy, it's almost invisible, which is why it freaks people out. They can't track you by patterns anymore. You don't rise on bait. You don't fall into familiar traps. You don't rush to defend your position like it's fragile. Fragile people do that. You're not fragile. There's this quiet confidence that settled into your bones, not the performative kind, not the chest-out bravado, but the grounded kind that comes from knowing you already survived the part that was supposed to break you. You notice how you walk past arguments forming and they never fully ignite. How certain dynamics don't even attempt to attach themselves to you anymore. It's like friction avoids you because it doesn't get traction. That's when you realize control doesn't come from tightening your grip. It comes from not being gripped by anything else. You hear it in how people talk around you. They check facts twice. They soften edges. They pause before saying things they would have thrown at you casually before. Not because you demanded respect, because consequences feel clearer in your presence. Well, well, hello, beautiful monsters of the mind. Welcome back to the place where fear has no leash, where pain isn't weakness, it's gasoline. You're not here by accident. You're here because deep down, you felt it too. That scream inside you, that howl that refuses to die. And today, oh, today, we feed it. One man, a horde of witches, total annihilation. Yes, they begged for mercy, and that's where the fun begins, because you weren't supposed to survive. You weren't even supposed to try. They looked at you and saw a sacrifice, a lamb trembling before the altar. They had numbers, they had rituals, they had blood magic, whispers in the dark, puppets on strings. And all you had was rage, untamed, unholy, undeniable. And that, my dear Chaos Chaser, was enough. They came for your mind first, didn't they? With spells of shame, curses of doubt. They called you names, crazy, broken, possessed. They tried to break you in the spirit before they broke you in the flesh. But you didn't shatter, you sharpened, because pain is just a forge for the wicked who refuse to kneel. And you, my magnificent freak of nature, you learned to turn your scars into blades. You stopped asking, why me? And started snarling, try me. You stopped crying to the sky and started clawing at the stars. They circled you like vultures around a dying soul, chanting, mocking, spitting hexes like venom. But you stood still, grinning in the storm, as if the chaos around you was just home. Because it is, isn't it? They didn't understand that you're not fighting to live anymore. You're living to fight. That's the twist. See, witches can't handle something they can't predict. They had spells for weakness, but not for revenants, not for someone who's already died 1,000 emotional deaths and came back with a darker laugh each time. One man, a walking grave of betrayals, disappointments, sleepless nights, and boiling rage. One man, with demons he no longer runs from, but walks beside. And then it happened. You didn't scream, you didn't pray, you come slaughtered. Like poetry in motion, a symphony of brutality, one after another, witches turned to carcasses, spells melted to dust. The sacred altar cracked, their high priestess screaming, their shadows running. And you didn't stop. Because it wasn't revenge, it was redemption. They begged for mercy. Mercy? Oh, how delightful. The same mouths that cursed your name, now pleading for your grace. The same hands that tried to chain you, now reaching out in trembling surrender. But mercy is for those who still believe in gods. You became one. You didn't just destroy their bodies. You humiliated their legacy. You rewrote the story. They thought they'd burn you at the stake, but they lit the fire, and you just walked through it. And what did you lose in the blaze? Everything you never needed. Guilt, fear, doubt, hope in the hands of cowards. What did you keep? The hunger, the wrath, the endless unkillable untamed will to outlive every curse they threw your way. So here we are. One man, no army, no angels, no escape plan, just scars, a grin, and a savage refusal to bow. And they fell, each and every one. And what's left now? You, standing in the ruins, breathing in the ash, knowing that no spell, no prophecy, no whispered chant in a foreign tongue can hold a candle to a soul who's walked through hell and stayed to burn it down. You see, when they begged for mercy, it wasn't because they were afraid of you. Not at first. They were afraid of what you're presented. A glitch in their perfect little system. A mistake in the script. A man who refused to stay in his cage. They saw you as an outlier, an anomaly. They said, He won't last. He'll break soon. He doesn't understand the rules. But you never played by their rules. You flipped the board, set fire to the game, and carved your name into the ashes with your teeth. Because you weren't born for peace. You were born for chaos. The kind that isn't loud at first. No. It creeps in, silent, surgical, until the infection becomes a revolution. Until one man becomes a myth. Until your enemies stop sleeping, because they keep hearing your footsteps in their dreams. Do you know what you became out there, in the blood and bone and betrayal? You became everything they feared. Not a soldier, not a hero, not even a villain, but a truth they couldn't bury, because you taught them that fear is not a spell, it's not a scream, it's a presence, a shadow that follows them now, not cast by the moon, but by you, one man. And now they hear you in every whisper. They see you in every flicker of darkness. They flinch at every sound behind them, because you turned from prey to phantom, from victim to verdict, from mortal to monster. And the best part? You didn't need permission. You didn't wait for a sign. You didn't ask the stars. You didn't write a plan, or form a team, or beg for guidance. You simply stood up and chose to become the reckoning. They said, one man can't change the tide. You didn't change the tide. You became the storm. You didn't wait for someone to save you. You unkilled the part of you that needed saving. And in that silence, after the last witch fell, after the spells stopped humming, after the blood dried on your boots, you didn't cry, you didn't collapse, you just laughed. Because now they understand. There is no cage big enough for a man who burns from within. So when they ask, how did he do it? How did one man destroy a horde? Tell them, because he was already dead inside. And that made him unstoppable, because he had nothing left to lose. And that made him everything to fear, because when the world forgot him, he remembered who the hell he was. And now, they will never forget. Do you know why they never saw it coming? Because they assumed the worst thing in this world is a man who's angry. But no, the true nightmare is a man who's empty. No more dreams, no more hope, no more belief in rescue or redemption, only purpose. They called you broken, but you were beyond broken. You were hollowed out, and then are built with rage. And while they danced in circles, chanting in ancient tongues, you were sharpening your intent. They tried to conjure demons, not realizing you already were one. They underestimated what silence breeds, what loneliness creates, what happens when a man sits too long in the dark and starts to feel at home there. You didn't just survive their attacks. You studied them. You learned their patterns. You watched their rituals, their arrogance, their hierarchy. And you smiled, because every spell they cast, every illusion they fed to the world, was just another line in the suicide note they didn't know they were writing. You didn't kill them with power. You killed them with clarity. You looked into their souls and saw that under all the cloaks and chants and sigils, they were just scared little cowards in masks. And you had nothing left to hide. They said, you can't face the coven alone. And you replied, then I'll face them all at once. They said, you'll die out there. And you laughed, I've died already. This is just the encore. Because once a man sheds his skin, the one they stitch together with trauma and guilt and silence, he becomes something else. Something they have no spell for, no cage for, no mercy from. You became the reckoning, not with holy light, not with justice, but with raw, unnamed, unforgivable vengeance. They brought the darkness, and you answered it. And one by one, witches fell. Some screamed, some ran, some tried to chant your name like it was a ward, but they were too late, because by then, you weren't just a man anymore. You were a force, a curse, a story whispered by survivors to their trembling children. Don't go out after midnight. He's still out there, the one who killed the whole coven. Alone. The one who smiled while they screamed. The one who didn't blink when the blood hit his lips. The one who didn't need help, forgiveness, or applause. Only the silences of absolute annihilation now. Listen closely, because this isn't a speech anymore. It's a ritual. Not with blood and symbols, but with truth so sharp it'll split your spine if you look away. They said you were alone, but you were never alone. You walked with every betrayal burned into your memory, every laugh at your expense, every spell they cast to weaken you, to humiliate you, to make you question your own reflection. They wanted to drown you in shame, in silence. They wanted to erase your name. But the problem is, you can't erase something that's carved in bone. You can't burn a man who's already ash inside. And you sure as hell can't stop the one who's already buried everything soft in him 6 feet under. Because while they gathered in their sanctuaries, painting symbols in blood, you were somewhere silent, holding in screams so loud they would have shattered the skies if you let them out. You didn't need spells. You didn't need enchantments. You had something older, something primordial. You had pain with a purpose. You had rage with direction. Not rage that burns out, not rage that flares up and dies in tears, but the kind of rage that becomes discipline, the kind of rage that builds thrones out of corpses. You became the man who walks alone, not because no one stood beside him, but because no one was strong enough to keep up. They didn't see you coming because they were too busy laughing, too busy underestimating you, too busy casting their pathetic little hexes, thinking you were still the same boy they broke. But that boy died, and no one came to his funeral, except you. You buried him with your own hands, tears in your mouth, dirt in your lungs, and silence in your soul. And when you stood back up, you weren't him anymore. You were the aftermath. You became what happens when a man accepts that there's no rescue, no cavalry, no hero at the last second, only the monsters and the ones who refused to be eaten. They called themselves a coven. They believed in unity, rituals, control. But you had the nothing left to control. Your soul had already been torn open, your emotions already drained, and you learned to fight, not like a man who wanted to win, but like a man who had nothing left to lose. That's what they never understood. They were witches, but you were a wound that never closed. You were a hole in the universe that no spell could fill. You were not guided by gods, or fate, or prophecy. You were guided by the voice inside you that said, "Let it all burn." And so you did. They begged for mercy, and you didn't even speak, because at that point, mercy was beneath you. Mercy is for the guilty. Mercy is for the remorseful. Mercy is for enemies who are worthy of remembering. But these witches, they didn't earn memory. They earned erasure. So you gave it to them, with silence, with violence, with a cold, methodical destruction so absolute it looked like art. One man, one funeral pyre, and 100 names forgotten in the flame. But we're not done yet. Now we step over the ashes and build a throne from what's left. No more survival, no more revenge, only ascension. So, The witches are dead. The spells are gone. The coven has collapsed into dust, and the world stands quiet. But not the kind of quiet that comes with peace, no. This is the kind of silence that only follows a massacre, a silence that listens, a silence that remembers. Because when a man like you moves, the earth doesn't just shake, it changes. You see, they thought they were the architects of power, the gatekeepers of fear. But power doesn't come from chants or symbols or blood rituals. It comes from the ability to walk through hell and make it kneel. And now look at you, the man they laughed at, mocked, spat on, the one they said was mad, unstable, damaged goods, now sits upon a throne of bones, a monument to what happens when pain is weaponized. Because you didn't just survive, you didn't just fight back, you wrote the order of things. You made a statement so brutal, so final, that even the shadows now carry your name like a warning. And what's left? What do you have now? Everything. You have silence because no one dares speak against you. You have peace because nothing is left to take from you. You have power, not granted, but seized, earned in screams, paid for in scars. You don't need followers. You don't need an army, because you are the army. You are the myth, the lesson, the monster in the mirror. And they'll come. Oh yes, they'll come. More witches, more warlocks, more self-righteous holy fools who think they can undo what you've done. They'll chant their sacred words. They'll wave their relics. They'll call you a devil. But you won't flinch. Because when the horde comes again, you won't fight like a man. You'll fight like a memory that refuses to die. A ghost with fists. A legend made flesh. A nightmare that walks. Because when you annihilated the coven, you didn't just kill witches. You killed weakness. You killed hesitation. You killed the part of yourself that needed acceptance. And now, you're not looking to be saved. You're not looking to be loved. You're looking to be feared. You are the consequence. You are the aftermath. You are the voice that says, let them come. Let them chant. Let them believe. And I will bury them just the same. You thought it ended with the witches? No. That was just the first crack in the mirror. Because once you destroy the ones who pretended to be powerful, the ones who dressed in shadows, cast illusions, spoke in riddles, there's one truth left standing in the rubble. You just declared war on the entire hierarchy. And now, even the gods, the ones watching from their thrones above, the ones who once smirked at your suffering, now lean in. Because they see something they don't understand, something they thought couldn't exist. One man, no prophecy, no divine blood, no chosen one status, just pain, just trauma, just a fire that wouldn't go out, no matter how many storms they sent. And that terrifies them, because for centuries, power was passed down, bestowed, granted, but you didn't wait for it. You took it. You earned it in violence. You forged it in solitude. You hardened it through betrayal after betrayal, until every inch of your being became one word: unstoppable. The gods didn't speak when the witches cried. They didn't flinch when you bled. But now they whisper your name in closed circles. They ask each other, what happens when a mortal realizes he doesn't need us? What happens when a man becomes his own pantheon? Because you didn't just kill witches. You didn't just burn down the coven. You didn't just tear their kingdom apart. You eclipsed it. You became a new standard, not of goodness, not of order, but of dominance through defiance. You don't kneel to thrones anymore. You build your own, out of the shattered bones of anyone who thought they were untouchable. They thought they could break you and use the pieces, but you sharpened every shard and cut your way out. And now the sky watches, carefully, because they know if you can destroy a kingdom below, you can challenge the heavens next. And why wouldn't you? What have the gods ever given you? Peace? No. Love? Only when it could be taken away. Mercy? Never. They watched you suffer. They let you rot. They allowed the witches to circle like vultures around your soul. And only when you fought back, only when you struck first, did they finally notice you, not as a follower, not as a creation, but as a threat. You made them look down from their thrones. And when gods look down in fear, they don't see a man anymore. They see a reckoning wrapped in flesh, a mortal who devoured pain like wine, who drank suffering like water and spat it back as fire. You see, there are no rules now, no more chains, no more thrones you fear. Only one voice remains, yours. So let it thunder through the heavens. I am not here to bow. I am not here to beg. I am not here to serve. I am here to ruin what ruined me. And I will not stop until every eye that watched me suffer is blinded by the light of my ascension. They thought the story was over. Witches dead. Gods trembling. A throne built from agony and ash. But there's always one more chapter they forget to write. The chapter where death arrives. He comes quietly, doesn't he? No fanfare, no drama, just that cold certainty, that final breath, that flicker of light before nothingness. He's taken warriors, he's taken tyrants, he's taken empires, he's taken gods. But when he came for you, he paused. Not out of pity, not out of mercy, but because for the first time in all eternity, death saw a soul he couldn't carry. Why? Because you were already dead, not in body, but in spirit. The day they broke you, the day they laughed while you bled, the day you buried your softness and let the fire move into your rib cage. You didn't need to fear death, because you had already become something far more terrifying, a soul that chose to stay behind. Not for peace, not for love, but for war. He reached out his hand, and you didn't move, didn't tremble, didn't flinch. You stared him down like you did the witches, like you did the gods, like you did the past that tried to chain you. And he understood. He didn't speak. He didn't argue. He just stepped back. Because even death has rules, and one of them is this: he cannot take what refuses to die. You weren't finished. You weren't done punishing this world. You weren't done teaching every soft, smug thing that dared mock you what it means to face the final evolution of pain. You were not a man anymore. You were a remnant, a defiance made real, an echo of war that will not fade. And so death walked away. And in that moment, the universe blinked, because it had to update the rules. Now there's a new law written in the blood of the fallen. If you cross him, your death will not be quick. It will not be honored. It will be erased. Because that's your gift, your curse, your legend. You don't just kill. You don't just burn. You delete. You strip the soul from the story. You turn legacies into rumors. You take names and grind them into nothing. Death may still come for others, but you're the one who walks after him, cleaning up what he missed, finishing what even he was too merciful to complete. You are the closing chapter, the post-credits scene, the black mark in the sky that never leaves. You've burned the witches, made the gods tremble, watched death retreat like a shadow under your boot. But now you arrive at the last battlefield, and there's no army, no blood-soaked altar, no screaming enemies, just you. Not the man you are now, but the version they built, the scared one, the broken one, the obedient one who flinched at their voices, who begged for crumbs, who whispered, "Please don't hurt me." And finally, to anyone listening, remember this: if they buried you, make sure you rise like a curse. If they feared you, make sure you become the reason they scream in their sleep. One man, no savior, no spells, just annihilation and the birth of a legend. Animus Morphosis, out.